this person is wrong, then the way we interact with them is basically our mindset. If we have a feeling that this person is talented, then the way we interact with them is based on our mindsets. There's many mindsets that really allow us to move forward. There's other mindsets that really pull us back.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Eternal Optimist Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Drinkon. And today we have another guest on that I feel may shift your mind, per se, around how we might overcome some of the things that are going on in our minds. So without any further ado, I'm going to welcome my guest to the show today. Mr. Mitch Weisburgh is with us today. Mitch, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Matt. So thank you so much for having me on your show, and I'm looking forward to a real conversation, and let's get going.
Heck yeah, let's do it. Well, let's dive in first and give the audience some context. Mitch, you can talk for 30 seconds or a few minutes, whatever you prefer. Just give us some context, please. Who is Mitch Weisburgh?
So I was looking at your emails, and you list, proud to be a front row dad on your emails, and it's like, something. I guess I'm proudest of being a dad, being an uncle, being a great uncle, being a grandfather now, and being a husband. So basically, I would say who I am is somebody is a person who relates well to, younger kids. Now, what I'm doing, okay, is right now I'm doing mind shifting. I'm teaching classes, and I'm writing about the ability for us to really take control over our minds so that we can be happier, be more effective, and be more productive. So that's basically what I'm doing. But who I am, I'll go back to being the dad and the uncle.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you opened up the door, so I'm gonna walk in. You said dad, uncle, grandfather, husband. Can you go back to the date and time when you met this person who is now your wife?
Right.
And give us a quick minute or two. What's the origin story of all of this? Where you had to become a dad, well, you had to meet the wife. So what was that origin story where you met your wife?
Okay, so there's always a story to everything. Okay, in my story, my sister had introduced me to a friend of hers, who's a really nice person named Barbara. And I met Barbara, and it was like, I'm not going to go out with Barbara. Okay. She just, we're not going to connect at all. So my sister tried a couple times. We didn't connect. Fast forward about 4 months, and my sister is getting married. Barbara's there. I'm there. Barbara gives me a sheet of paper and says, "You're in Boston. I'm in New York. I know we're never going to get together, but I have a really good friend not far from you. Here's her name. Here's her phone number. Give her a call." Okay. So I get home from the wedding, and I'm thinking, there is no way I'm going to go out with a friend of Barbara's. So basically, I throw it out. My sister comes home from her honeymoon. She got married in November. She comes back, and she says, "So Mitch, what do you think of Barbara's friend?" And I'm saying, "Oh, Sue, you wouldn't believe this. I had the name and number. I put it in my shirt. I sent the shirt into the laundry, and I just don't have it." Okay. So Sue says, "I know you well enough to figure that something like that was probably going to happen. I called Barbara first. I got the name and phone number. Let me give it to you." And I'm like, "Sue, because this is 1983. We don't have cell phones or anything. I'm home." And it says, "Sue, you're not going to believe this, but I'm home. I don't have anything to write on." She says, "That's okay. I'll call you tomorrow at work." Well, so this is now like the beginning of December. My sister called me every week or two through March about calling Barbara. And finally in March, I'm like, calling Barbara's friend. I'm like, okay, this is never going to stop. I'm going to have to call her. So I called her, and she says, "You're calling me now? Barbara told me about you 4 months ago." Okay, I'll come into New York. I'll meet you. And so we met. She then went home, and she had a roommate who was going out with a guy, and I talked to her about karate, and we went out for Japanese food. She says, her friend was Ellen. She says, Ellen, I found a guy who's perfect for you because I know you're really interested in Japan and you should meet this guy. And Ellen says to her, me, she says, I already have a boyfriend. If you liked him, you should go out with him again. And Karen says to her, no, Ellen, your boyfriend is totally inappropriate for you. You should go out with this guy, Mitch. And Ellen says, I like my boyfriend. You should go out with him. So then we agreed to a second date and we went out. And I think by the third or fourth date, that's, we kind of knew. It was just I guess around the third date. So she lived just over the Hudson River from me. She lived in not Piermont is the name of the town, in Piermont, New York. And
Okay.
so I
Is it
went
like an hour away, or how far is that
40
away?
minutes. Well, so yeah, from New York
Okay.
City, maybe an hour away. But I went to visit her in Piermont for the third or fourth date, and it was summer. It was like 95, 98 degrees. I mean, it was really hot. And she says, we're going to go for a bicycle ride. So it's okay. She says, I have a bicycle. Here, you can borrow Ellen's bicycle. Well, Ellen is 4'11". Okay. I'm 5'10". So I get on Ellen's bike and we go over the tallest mountain in Rockland County, Tallman Mountain it's called. And 97, 98 degree, 95-degree weather. And like my shirt is just completely soaked. Okay. We go down, we visit some friends of hers. They serve us lemonade and iced tea. We get back on our bikes. We go back up over the mountain. We go back down. We end up at her house. And she says, oh my gosh, we're late. We're having dinner at my parents' house. And I said, I can't have dinner at your parents' house. I just soaked through this shirt twice. And she says, no, just shut up and get in the car. So we get in the car. We drive over half an hour to her parents' house. And like, thankfully, her brother was in college. And so her brother was there. And so I sit kind of at the end of the table. I turn my back to her parents and I just talked to her brother for the rest of the evening and I completely ignored them. But that's how I met her parents too.
Wow. So this is 1983. This is 42 years ago. And you guys, are you still married? Is she still with us?
We met So 83 was when my sister got married. And I'm just like going back to the dates. We got married in 1985.
Yeah.
So this will be in May 1985. That'll be our 40th anniversary. And we have 2 kids.
Wow. Oh, man, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, things come together, right?
There's some nuggets of wisdom on that story. I'm going to pull us back to a different path, but thank you for sharing the origin story. I appreciate your deep storytelling ability. I'm looking forward to this next question here. And it's the question I ask every guest. And I'd like you to take a trip back in time, Mitch, and think about a time in your life where there was something going on that was incredibly difficult for you. And just any of the memories you come up with are fine. But I'd love to ask you, what is that most challenging time that you're willing to share with us today of when you had to overcome some challenge?
Yeah, there were so many, like we all, I'm basically 70. So, we've all had so many challenges in our life. I think I'm going to pick the time when I knew I needed to get rid of my business partner. So this is roughly 1990. It was, I had come up with the whole idea for the company. We trained people how to use computers. I developed the initial courses. I trained people how to teach the courses. I trained people how to develop courses. I did a lot of the selling. We had grown to 3 or 4 offices at that time. But my partner, who was kind of fostered on me by my dad, and he really wasn't working because of his relationship with my dad. He was earning about twice what I was earning. Again, even though I had started it, but it's like, no, you gotta pay him this. Well, we have to pay him this because he's got so much more experience. He's been in venture capital. He's been a lawyer. He deserves this money. You're just gonna have to. You'll get it back when the company goes public. Or what. So he's earning about twice as much as me. And the thing that really tipped me over, because I kind of knew it for a few years, but the thing that really kind of tipped me over was when he says, Mitch, that lease that we were talking about, that was really important, and we needed new computers to train people on computers. So my assumption was the lease for the computers. Okay, he says, I just need you to sign here and here for that lease. Okay, and so I signed the lease, and then like 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm like, where's the computers? And he says, What computers? I said, well, the lease that you had me sign. And he says, oh, no, no, that wasn't the lease for the computers. That was the lease for my car. And he had gotten like this $120,000 Mercedes-Benz car for himself from the company leasing it. And it was like, that's when it clicked in my mind. It's like, there is no way he's got to go out. So I talked to lawyers and stuff. And, one of the lessons that the lawyers taught me early on with him is that, if you have a really difficult negotiation like that, you're not going to give reasons or anything. Don't let him draw you into, but I've done this, but I've done it. You're just saying the time has come to an end and that's it. And don't, it's like, I know this is the time. It's just the end. You don't get into a discussion of anything. It's just the finality of this is the event. So I prime myself. I had that conversation with him. Then came
Wow.
the real negotiations was what was the severance going to be and how much was he going to be, and how, I guess the whole severance issue, he owned stock in the company, what we were going to do. And so, I wanted to be fair.
Wow.
Okay. He had a son graduating from college. He had a daughter going to college. It's like, I know he's got expenses and everything. So that negotiation lasted 6 months. The whole time we're paying his salary, he's basically not working. And I gave him 6 months salary, and I bought his stock for probably three times what it was really worth. But we signed the agreement. I gave him the check. And at the point we
Wow.
signed the agreement, he puts his arm around my shoulder. He says, Mitch, I'm gonna teach you something because you're a good guy and I like you. So I'm gonna teach you this lesson. He says, I knew I had you the moment you told me you wanted to be fair. He says, I had no desire to be fair at all. I wanted to get as much money as I could possibly get. And I got it. You really overpaid in this deal. He says, when you're negotiating with somebody, you have to figure out, are they trying to be fair too? And if they're not trying to be fair, you just have to come up with something and you have to decide they're going to accept it or they're not going to accept it. But don't try to be fair with somebody who's not trying to be fair to you. And that was a really expensive lesson. So that's like the first part of this. Okay. The second part of this is that when I finally got rid of him, he was one partner, my dad was the other partner, and I'm figuring, oh, my dad and I, we're going to now run this company. Okay. We have a
Yeah.
board meeting, and my dad shows up at the board meeting and says to the board members, okay, this was Mitch's idea to get rid of the partner. I was against it from the very beginning. I let Mitch do it. I actually have no confidence that Mitch can ever run a company on his own. I was the one who really did everything for this company. Jack did everything for this company. But if Mitch is going to insist on this, I'm quitting right now, and this company is going to go under, and that's it. And he walked out of the board meeting. And so that
What?
was like, yeah, that was like, and the board basically, so each of the three partners, myself and
So,
this other partner, had somebody on the board. All three of them said to me, Mitch, he's really angry. We have a lot of confidence in you. We know you're the one who built this business so far, and we think you're gonna do really well. So I kind of, it was a big shock. I had a really interesting, hard conversation with my mom because my mom actually worked in the business also. And
yeah.
my mom says to me, okay, you know something? I can very well understand if you never want to see your dad again. I might be in the same situation if I were you. What he did was horrible. I knew he was going to do it. I argued with him. He insisted he was going to do it. I couldn't stop him. And I don't blame you at all if you decide if you never want to see him again. But I want to make something is that I married him and I married him for better or worse. So if you decide that you never want anything more to do with him, you're also deciding you never want any more to do with me. And I know and that's your decision. I don't think your decision is wrong either way, but that's the decision that you face.
Goodness, Mitch.
So that
And you're
that, that was
35
our
years old.
yes.
You just had your partner, your ex-partner, school you with this lesson in life. What a jerk. Can I just say it? What a jerk. And after that, you're going in the board meeting, and out of nowhere, your dad says this. Can you take us back to that moment when your dad starts to share this? What was the level of shock, and how did you feel in that moment when he started to say these things right there in the board meeting, Mitch?
Well, it was like what was going on in my head was WTF.
Yeah.
Like it's like
Yeah.
what's going on? This is like all the things I had envisioned. This is not what's, it was just shock. And then when he walked out and the board, first they said, let's take a minute or two to just have a recess and let's come back in 2 minutes or 5 minutes. And then when we came back, the three of them says, Mitch, and then I guess I just went back and it's like, so where do I go from here? Where do I build the business from here? And I, we did build it. It was, I can't say that I built it. We got to the point where there were like 130 people in the company. This is by 1995, 1996. We were,
Yeah.
That was our best year. We did like close to $11 million. We had 7 offices ranging from Washington, D.C. up through New Haven, Connecticut. So it was like everything that I had thought of in the past, it's like, just put that away because it's completely irrelevant now. Where you are now is you have a company that is by the time that they left, it's losing a little bit of money, but it's pretty close to break even. We've got these 4 offices. I know that what we're teaching is really valuable to the people who are taking the classes. The people who are working here love working here. Where can we take the company? Is like, just look forward.
I'm still like in a little bit of shock myself, secondhand, just hearing the story about being. Did it feel like a betrayal, or did it feel business? I mean, where was that line of personal
No,
and
it felt like a personal betrayal. It felt like, it's like it's your
Yeah,
dad, okay, and is your dad
yeah,
saying that he has no confidence in you and he thinks that you're basically an idiot and that he has saved you, which I knew was he hadn't. I knew that this was
yeah,
really mine. I mean, since then, he's done it in smaller ways to me and to my sisters. And so I've seen that it's a pattern of his, that it's a defensive, when he gets flustered and that he strikes out. He did it to my mom a few times. So since then, I've seen him do it to other people, but this was the first time that I really saw it and that I really experienced with something big.
yeah. Well, moving forward a little bit after that conversation, the one with your mom, I mean, that also must have been very difficult. I mean, what was that conversation like in the moment and then afterwards, making that decision on how you're going to go forward?
So I thought the conversation with my mom, what was going through my mind was, I am so proud of her. To be able to come to what was really important to her, and to be able to say it in a way that wasn't accusatory, that showed a tremendous amount of empathy. It was like, oh my gosh, I hope that I can do something. I hope that I can be like this in major decisions, major points as well. That's what was going through my mind.
Wow. Wow, that's a different level of being able to pause and be present that you can be proud of her while at the same time you're now going to be faced with a decision that it hurts either way. Uh, Ultimately, how did you move forward
I moved
after the
forward
mom's
with
conversation?
Well, I moved forward with being part of the family. As a matter of fact, my mom passed away about 10 years before my dad, and I was the main caretaker for my dad, especially as he started getting dementia. So the last 2 or 3 years, really, he was in a place that was about a 20 minutes, well, 15-minute car drive away from here, but I was over there
Yeah.
twice a week. I made sure that he was well taken care of. I made sure that he had companionship. As he was running out of money, I supplemented what he had. It was just like, and we kept it. 2 things going through me is like, this is what my mom would have wanted, and basically, it's the what is the 5th commandment is like, honor your parents, or honor your father, or it's like,
Yeah.
this is part of being human. This is what I'm going to do.
Oh, man, so many levels of. I've been taken to the depths of feeling just betrayed and feeling low, and just imagining my mom and dad and that conversation, having with them, and now I'm kind of brought back by this nobility and being able to still serve your family through thick and thin. So thank you for that roller coaster of
Oh,
emotion there.
and I don't,
Wow.
like when you use the word nobility, to me, it was just being human. It was just like that.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This is what people should be doing, and this is what I'm going to do.
Awesome. Well, now that I think we're connected, let's move forward to the concept of mind shifting. Now, first of all, can you talk about definition of what mind shifting means to you and why this is the place that you are investing, you're pouring your passion into,
Right.
Mitch.
Really, everything that we do stems from our mindset. If we have a mindset that we can do something, then what we do stems from that. If we have a mindset that this person is wrong, then the way we interact with them is basically our mindset. If we have a feeling that this person is talented, then the way we interact with them is based on our mindsets. There's many mindsets that really allow us to move forward. There's other mindsets that really pull us back. And mind shifting is to be able to recognize them when we're in a mindset that's really counterproductive to what we want, and then to be able to quiet those parts of the mind and then tap into other mindsets that are more resilient and resourceful. So it's shifting from the mindsets that get in our way into the mindsets that really allow us to move forward.
Excellent description. When did this concept start to show up for you in your world, either personally, professionally? Just when was the genesis of this?
Yeah, and I think that it grew. I think the very first time I understood it was when we had brought in a speaker to talk to my PC training company, and I was still pretty young, and she was old, like she was like almost 50, if you can believe that, right?
Not that I'm turning 50 soon, but
You're right, yeah. So
nice.
So,
Yeah.
and she said, an event is just an event, that just happens. The way we take that event is in our brains, in our minds. And so she brought up the idea of a traffic jam, that sometimes you're in a traffic jam and it's like, oh, this car is so slow and I'm going to be late for the meeting. And what am I going to do? The world's going to fall apart. And other times we're in a traffic jam and it's like, oh, wow, this is really good music. And I'm listening to a podcast that's really interesting, and or whatever. So it still is a traffic jam either way, but it's our minds, and we can control our minds if we realize that our minds are going off. And about a week later, I was in a traffic jam, and I was supposed to be at a sales call. The woman who was our salesperson on this call had arranged for a really big prospect to come in, and they were going to meet me. And
Yeah.
I'm in a traffic jam, and I'm going to be late, and I all this pressure. Okay, and it's like, something, this woman just said it's in our head. So it's like, just calm down. The world isn't going to come to an end. Let me just call the salesperson. I called the salesperson, and she's like, don't worry, Mitch. I wanted this person to meet you, but I can handle this. I can close the business. But if you're here, that will be great. And if you're not here, don't worry about it. And I come down. It turns out I did get to the meeting in time, and we had the meeting, and we closed the business. It's like, wow, something. You can change this. And subsequent to that, I took courses in neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which taught some more. And then maybe 6 or 8 years later, I've read a lot of books. 6 or 8 years later, I took the Landmark series of courses, if you're familiar with those, Landmark Education.
Yeah.
They have the 4 courses that they call the curriculum, and I went through that. And I encouraged nieces and nephews of mine to go and take those courses also. I'm thinking about all these things, and I'm thinking about how we can get ourselves into frames of mind that are really helpful. And I'm looking at all the fights that are happening in society, and we have these issues, and one person is blaming the next person, people think that they can't succeed when they can succeed, and all these things are going out of my mind. When out of the blue, I get this email from a university in Niger, not Nigeria, Niger.
Wow.
In saying, we're looking for education technology entrepreneurs to talk to our undergraduates about education technology. Would you be willing to speak? And I'm thinking, having a U.S. education technology entrepreneur talk to undergraduates in Niger, one of the 2 or 3 poorest countries in the world, I can't believe that that's going to be helpful to their undergraduates. But then it's at the same time, I'm thinking about all these problems, and I'm thinking, kind of a throwaway line, but if you want, I could teach them how successful people make sense of situations and how they could use those concepts. And so then we went back to, the first response was, well, could you come out here for a semester and teach it? And I'm like, I'm not going to Niger for a semester and teach this. And I proposed, well, why don't I teach a 2-day workshop? And they said, well, why don't you teach two? So, so we agreed that, and we're talking in June, July 2017. We agreed that in February
Okay.
2018, I would go out there and I would teach a 2-day workshop twice to 60, 65 undergraduates. And, we kind of shook hands over the Zoom call or the Skype call, whatever it was at the time. I get off and I'm like, Mitch, you have no idea how you're going to do this. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So I read 11 books and watched a lot of, I read books on military strategy, psychology, economics, um, coaching, pedagogy, all these different fields. And what I felt as I'm reading through these books that everybody has a slice of this, but really nobody had put it together across these different disciplines. So I tried to pull stuff from all these different areas and put it into a 2-day course about how our minds can get in our own way and how we can overcome that. So I fly out to Niamey, Niger. I teach the first bunch, 65 kids. And at the end of the 2 days, I'm like, okay, and that's sense making. And they stood up and cheered. And it's like, okay,
Oh,
this hits a nerve because nobody tells you, when you're growing up, nobody tells you just because you're sure something is true. That doesn't make it true. That's a story that's going on in your mind. And probably when somebody
okay.
challenges you, instead of listening to them, you're probably thinking, they're challenging me. They're thinking I'm wrong. I'm going to prove that I'm right. So when you start learning these things that your mind sometimes pulls the wool over your eyes, that these stories are just convenient ways of coming up with explanations really quickly, and that you can change them and how to go about and constantly be improving. It's like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, we have these new capabilities. So that was in February of 2018, and so from that time forward, I kind of gravitated from advising organizations that were creating education technology to use in schools, to focusing on what I initially called sense making. Now I call mind shifting.
And somewhere in this journey, you wrote your first book on the subject, and forget me, the mind shifting, stop your brain from sabotaging your happiness and success. Is that the title of the book?
That's the title. That's
Uh,
that's the title of the book. Exactly. Yep. Thank you.
okay. So can you talk a little bit about that book, from your first story you shared there in Niger in
Mhm.
2017? How did the book come to fruition? And love to hear a little bit about the book too.
So I'm thinking after the course, like how do we arrange so that critical mass of people in the world who know how to control their minds, who know how to be resourceful, who know how to work with others to collaborate, who know how to be empathetic, and also know how to be aggressive when they have to be aggressive. Okay, so how do we get people to understand how to use those skills and when to use them, and what would be a critical mass? And it kind of arbitrarily, there's 8.5 billion people on the planet. What came to my mind was 5 million people knew how to do this. The whole world would change. All these issues that we
Okay.
have, we would start working towards solutions rather than fighting each other, each person and each group demanding that their way is the right way. So I was thinking, how do I get this across? And since my background for the last 20, 25 years has been in education, it's like, well, what if I taught educators and the educators could then teach the kids? And so the next generation would grow up and they'd have these skills. So
Uh,
initially I took that 2-day course and I taught it in person, then I changed it to teach over an hour and a half, 2 hour Zoom sessions. And then it became too large. So I split it up into 3 courses. So the first course is on the brain itself and how do we take charge of our own brains. And the second course is, how do we look at situations when we should know that if it's a reasonably complex situation, the first thing going to do is probably not going to solve the problem. And yet, when we think it's going to solve the problem and it
huh.
doesn't, we think that we're failing, or whoever has tried it that they failed, and we have to abandon and start all over again. So how do we react productively to situations as a second class? And then the third course is, no matter what we do, we're probably going to be working with other people. And a good number of them are either going to get in our way, or they're going to disagree with us, or they're going to actively oppose us, or they're going to try to harm us. And the ways that we react to those situations of people getting in our way now, they tend not to work. So what are the things that we can try that will build allies rather than just result in destructive conflict? So the third is from conflict to collaboration. So one is on the brain, one is on situations, one is on conflict and collaboration. And since they were split across, and I'm teaching these courses, and I offer these courses to educators right now.
Okay.
Theoretically, any educator could sign up for the course, but in the states of New York and Washington, these courses are listed on the state portals, and I offer the courses free. So educators in either of those two states can sign up through its PD enroller in the state of Washington. Begins with an F, but there's a system for the professional development in New York State that any educator has access to. If they sign up for either of those two systems, they basically attend the courses free. And so I would like to get into other states or other large organizations where educators can take the courses. And if I'm in through an organization, it's a mission of mine. So I encourage the educators to take the courses for free. And so this one woman, Laura Zug, says to me, Mitch, if no state is just going to listen to plain old Mitch Weisburgh. You need more credibility, and your credibility is going to come if you have a book. So you have to write a book. She doesn't have to be a big book. It could be 40 pages that you give away free, but it has to be a book. And so I started thinking about writing a book. And then it's like, if I'm going to write a book, I don't want to just write a throwaway book. I want to write a book that makes a difference. So what I decided to do is to write a book based on that first course. So my first book is really based on the course on the brain, and it's about 50 different techniques to allow you to control your brain. And that book I finished, that book was published in December. And then I'm thinking, well, so, there's probably going to be 3 books. The second book probably is going to be on the situations, and the third is on conflict and collaboration. But in November, I taught a group of educators in New York City, and this group had specifically asked for the conflict and collaboration part of it. So it was a half day, 3-hour live session with them in the room. And when I saw the light bulbs going off in their heads about conflict and collaboration, because people don't even realize the way we phrase things, we may have the best of intentions, like I'm just giving you advice. But very often, just by the way we phrase things, get people riled up. And also, people are doing it to us. And they're not trying to argue with us necessarily. They're just giving us an alternative, and we're taking it like they're attacking us, and then we're attacking the back, and then that escalates. And when they could see the situations where they were doing that with each other, with administrators, with kids, where kids were doing it to them, I could see all those light bulbs go off. And I could see, as we talked about some of the issues that are facing our society, about abortion, about gun control, about care, and the way we're talking about those are just dividing us into 2 camps. But you can talk about them very differently, so that we could, a lot of us, most of us, actually have the same end goals, but we've come up with these different ideas. So when they saw how you can turn destructive conflicts into either things that aren't conflicts at all, or into constructive conflicts, so that what you're arguing about ends up as something that's better than either party could have come up with on their own, it was like, oh my gosh. So it was like, that has to be my second book. So I'm about halfway finished with that book right now. And I think that book will come out in October of this year. That's my goal.
Fantastic. What I'm feeling right now, I'm feeling a lot of traces of like the untethered soul, the surrender experiment. I'm feeling some Michael Singer type stuff right here, that you've undergone all of this stuff, and you've not let it as in you're a pushover, but you have allowed it to be in your space, and you're choosing your mindset around it. And it feels like you're at peace as a result of the way that you've been able to work through this.
Thank you. And I'll tell you, I was looking at your podcast also, and I guess 1 or 2 times ago you had this woman Kelly Resendez on, and it was like, oh my gosh, what she's saying is this. She was so inspiring, and the way you talked to her, it was like, oh my gosh, that's really anybody should listen to her podcast. I thought that was very moving.
Thank you. Yeah, she was amazing. To be able to do, and those of you listeners, if you listen, you know that Kelly's run a number of companies, and she had to overcome some self sabotage, if you will, being a kind of workaholic, if you will,
and real
and she was able
events
to work
that
through that.
and real events that she overcame.
Yeah.
That it's like, oh my gosh, like it's devastating things.
And just to hear that, I'm feeling this common thread between all of us. Some can take what we'll call the mind shift and be able to find a way to, Viktor Frankl, between the stimulus and the response, we have that choice in the middle to be able to consciously choose and shift the way that you think about it. Leads me to the simplest question in the whole world. How do we take charge of our brains, Mitch?
So
Read the book.
Read the book. Okay, thank you. Read the book. Yeah, I'm the teacher in me is like, well, okay, you asked. It's so I call it the self commander, and the interrupter and the self commander, and there's really three basic things. Okay, the first thing is self awareness, is to understand that you're in a fight or flight mode, or actually, it's broader than just fight or flight. Your limbic parts of the brain, your lower parts of the brain are controlling you. So that's number one. And sometimes that's enough. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm reacting limbically. Okay, done. I don't have to do that. Sometimes, in addition to that, in addition to that, there's some self-talk things that you can do, like to open up your own brain, or sometimes you can talking things that you can do with other people to help other people open up their brains. So say internal chatter is the second tool. And then the third tool is a type of distraction, and that can be mindfulness. That can be going for a walk. That can be listening to music. That can be art. That can be exercise. There's so many different ways of doing that, but sometimes your brain just has to calm down. And I guess it's kind of a little bit of a funny story. This is about a month or two ago, and something happened in our family that it was just really, really upsetting to me, and I was so angry, and I realized that okay, I'm not, I'm off the phone or whatever, and I realized, okay, that's my limbic brain, I'm in fight or flight mode. I'm going to calm myself down, and I go into a mindfulness, and I couldn't do it. Okay. But I realized I was there. So I called my son. He's an adult, he's 37, 38 years old. Okay. So I called my son, and I'm like, Herbie, that this just happened, and I can't calm myself down. And he's like, Daddy, you wrote the book on it. He says, I'm just gonna follow some of the things that are right in your book. And he just goes through 2 or 3 of the techniques, and I just needed somebody else to do it for me, with me.
Yeah.
But at least I had the presence to understand this is too big for me to just distract on my own. I need somebody else. And there's times that you need somebody else.
Man, fantastic. Okay, so I'm definitely buying the book now. Where's the best place to A, find the book, and B, to connect with you, maybe learn with you, just find you online, Mitch?
Okay, so the book is available on the easiest place is Amazon. Mind Shifting, Stop Your Brain from Sabotaging Your Happiness and Success. So you can find it very easily on Amazon. For me personally, I just redid my website to reflect the fact that I do speaking, I do writing, and I run these courses. And my website is mindshiftingwithmitch.com. And from there, there's links to the courses, there's links to the books, links to my newsletter. So mindshiftingwithmitch.com. And then you could also find me on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
No, thank you for letting me preach a little bit.
Well, yeah, I love it. And I'm on there right now. And it looks like this is primable. So I can probably get this in the next day or few. Let's see. Digital access. You can get the book right away. So I'm going to get it right now. So thank you. This is pretty cool. I can get the book right now. So anyone go over to Amazon, you can find it right away. Paperback, primable, excellent.
So another funny story is there's this much younger woman who had bought the book, and I know her, and she called me, and we're just talking about different things, and the book, and she says, and I'm just absolutely paralyzed right now because I have to speak in front of 300 people in 2 weeks. I don't know what to do. So I'm like, oh, okay, let's go to page 75 of the book and let me walk you through this technique. And it's like, oh my gosh, it was right here all along. I feel so much better. It's like it was cool.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been really cool. I don't want to hang up just yet. I want to ask you one more question because I'm sensing, since you shared that you're almost 70 and I'm almost 48, so you got me by about 22 years
Okay.
in life. And I'm curious if you could go back to your 48-year-old self and, share anything you picked up over the last 22 years, what might be a thought that you could share with your younger version of Mitch? Mitch?
Be yourself. Be yourself, and be yourself with other people, because other people love you the way you are.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, Mitch, my friend, we're down to the lightning round. I got a couple last
Oh,
questions to
okay.
ask you before we wrap this thing up.
Hmm.
And since we're talking about books, and you've mentioned a couple times you read a bunch of books, I'm kind of in a candy store right now. For example, when we say where's the store you could just park yourself in and be excited, as a kid, it was Toys R Us. As an
Great.
adult, it's a bookstore, right? So I'm curious, what might be 1 to 3 books that you've read that you might recommend to our audience today?
So I think the book Self Reg by Stuart Shanker, it's all about self-regulation. And a lot of it is self-regulate is teaching kids how to be self-regulators. So I think that's definitely one of the books on the top of my reading list. Classic is Nonviolent Communications by Marshall Rosenberg. Great techniques for how to talk to people when you're trying to influence them or you disagree with them in ways that don't promote fights. And I'm also going to recommend a movie. Okay, it's a Netflix movie
Okay.
called Stutz, Stutz. Now, this is a movie. Stutz is a psychiatrist to basically very wealthy people in the stars, and I forget the comedian's name who basically
Jonah Hill
Jonah
is
Hill.
the
Thank you very
comedian.
much. Thank you, thank you so much, Jonah Hill. So I watched that movie 6 times to be able to write down every single one of his techniques so that I could pick and choose which ones I wanted to pull into the courses and the books. But those techniques were great.
I will affirm that because we use a number of those in our coaching practice now. So love to hear that. So thank you for the books. And I haven't heard of Self Reg yet, so that's the second one I'm going to get today. So thank you for these recommendations. And listeners, I feel just by speaking with Mitch today and looking at him in the eye, I mean, I feel pretty connected. I feel that in 22 years, God willing, I make it to 70. I feel being able to teach some of the things that he has for us today. I would like to carry on with some of that mantle because I feel like as I age, hopefully it's gracefully, but as I age, I feel like I'm getting more connected around some of these strategies of finding inner peace. And I think that there could be something we can unlock by studying and learning from Mitch here. So I encourage our listeners to check out
Thank
the
you.
things that he shared. Mitch, how about music? Is there a song, a genre, an artist that just gives you some inspiration that you recommend?
So I mostly listen to Latin music. And the problem with me listening to Latin music, although I do speak Spanish pretty well, is that I have nobody to talk to the music about. So I don't really know the names of the songs. I just listen to the music. But away from Latin music, there was an artist whose name was Little Jackie, and she had a song, "The World Should Revolve Around Me," and it's like, oh, that's a nice up song. I every once in a while I just put that song on. It just makes me happy. The World Should Revolve Around Me by Little Jackie.
Thank you. That will be on my Spotify on Saturday night for puzzle night. So I appreciate that song. And Mitch, last but not least, you get the last word. Here's the final question. You are on the Eternal Optimist podcast. What might eternal optimist mean to you, sir?
So the eternal optimist to me it's a great phrase, and it also resonates with slightly different phrases that other people have used. So a lot of psychiatrists use the phrase radical acceptance. So radically accept that everything is for the best and you will do fine. There's a person, Shirzad Shamin, who uh, has written a book, has written, I guess, a number of books, and he talks about the sage perspective, which is very similar. And you look at every situation and you find the gifts and opportunities in every situation. Or there's a lot of books about the law of attraction, and all of those. I think, like the eternal optimist, it's like you can make something good about everything. That's what's in your head, and I think that's what what you bring in your podcast.